Hey guys, hello, hello. Let me get seated here. All right, I want to give you some updates on my plants because I can. I'm here and I have been observing some of the growth of some of my plants and some of the not so much growth of my plants. So I wanted to show that with you. Oh, damn it, look at this, my Hoya leaf. I literally just knocked this off. That's such a bummer. Oh boy. Okay, well that is a bummer. This video is brought to you by Espoma. So I would say the award for the biggest improvement would be this Hoya obovata. Now, I don't know if you recall my earlier episode on a root-bound Hoya, but this is the Hoya. That was that root-bound Hoya. So I'll have to pull up some images on the screen, but it was really sallow. It was really sickly looking. And I thought there could be two problems. One is the plant was either in really intense light and the chlorophyll within the chloroplast was degrading and it was actually causing yellowness to the leaves or just a general malaise. Or I thought that it must be root bound and it's just not able to get any water or nutrients up through the roots into the leaves and its stems. Or both, you know, maybe it could actually have very well been both. So when I ordered that Hoya obovata and I got it, I was just like, ooh, this is sickly. What was interesting about it is that it did have some peduncles and some flower buds on it. So it did bloom. It actually did bloom through all that stress. But you know, sometimes plants need stress in order to bloom, some form of stress. So maybe that is withholding of water, maybe it's withholding of nutrients, maybe it is a lot of rain, maybe it's a retention of actually the moisture, maybe it's more intense sun. There's all sorts of things that could act as a healthy stressor to plants in order to make them bloom. But in this case, it did bloom, but the leaves were really sad looking. And as you know, for most Hoyas, they're usually not in bloom, and it is their leaves that will adorn your apartment. So I was really stoked to get my hands on this. And if you recall, I was massaging the root ball and the roots were like so pent up. It was like a hard plastic. So I just soaked them in water and I ended up giving a nice organic fertilizer by Espoma. And actually every time I would come back, because I'm usually like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or 1 week on and 1 week off, every time I came back, I gave it another douse of fertilizer, which I typically don't do in the late fall months because that's when I think I was tending to this. But in this case, I figured it probably didn't have any nutrients and it was worth a shot. And I am so happy I did that. The other thing that I did is that I withheld light from the plant. Not like I didn't have it in complete darkness. It's not like I shoved it into a corner or in the closet or anything like that. But I just didn't have it in any kind of direct light because, again, I feared that, you know, maybe it had too intense light. And I did that, you know, when I first started growing plants, like whatever, 15 years ago in my apartment. I thought Hoya, because they have this kind of like pretty thick leaf, I kind of wrongfully assumed that it would want more intense light than it does. And when you put it under really intense light, it could actually damage those chloroplasts. And then the chlorophyll starts to degrade and leave the leaf, and then you get that yellowing of the leaf. I didn't want to put it under light right away, but once I started to see it green up, then I moved it under my new mother light, which you had probably also seen from an earlier episode. And that's a really great grow light that I got from a company in Belgium. And I wanted to document some of the new growth on this plant, and it was pretty miraculous. I mean, it is the dead of winter. It is so cold out today. Unfortunately, I knocked off a little new leaf from the Hoya obovata, so that was really unfortunate. But there's a lot of new leaves on this, so maybe it's not that unfortunate. So I think that this plant has definitely built up more resiliency. It's built up a lot more health, and I feel confident putting it right under a grow light right now because it's responded exceptionally well. It is the winter, and I have stopped fertilizing this, but as soon as spring comes around, which is like in a few more weeks, I'm definitely going to be fertilizing this again. And I was counting, it has like, I think 3 peduncles on it. So if I'm lucky, I will also see this blooming again next year, but who knows? Who knows? Okay, so the next one that I have to show you that I was tinkering with earlier on is this Rhaphidophora decursiva. Now this was a pretty generous cutting that I got from one of my houseplant home tours. And if you recall, this was a water propagation. And if I have the time, I don't always like to take my water propagations and just put it into its kind of final resting place. Not really its final resting place, but you know what I mean, like more of a soil substrate. Because the water roots are very different. If you look under a microscope, water roots are very, very different than the roots that it develops if you are actually rooting it up into a substrate. The water roots, they don't develop all these little kind of tentacled root hairs. They seem a lot more delicate, more easily broken than if you actually did the rooting up into a substrate. So what I like to do is actually transition from water roots into its potting medium. And what I usually use is either a vermiculite or a vermiculite perlite or part soil vermiculite perlite mix. I'll show you more of what I did there because I don't think I actually filmed that for the channel, but I did transition that, and then I eventually moved it into its substrate or this potting medium, which is kind of more of like a succulent soil and epiphyte mix blend with a bit more perlite in there. So I kind of got fancy and made my own little potting medium. So no new growth on this. I mean, I do see like a little growth coming out of this section right here, but I think this is probably going to wait for spring to actually do more of its growth. I mean, the roots are fairly substantial. So if it's putting more of its energy in its roots and then will eventually put out its leaves, then I think that's probably, hey, I think that's probably a better bet. Now, speaking of putting energy into roots, I wish that was happening with this Hoya Callistophyla. So if you recall, this is a little cutting that I got from my friends over at Flora Collaborative. Now, they were rooting this on a mist bench in a greenhouse, but I think they had just started to root it up and there weren't many roots on it. So I eventually moved it into this pot, and I kind of tugged on it earlier in the week, and it came right out, and I saw like some roots, but nothing that was really substantial. So I think this is in stasis right now, and it's probably waiting for spring to come. You can actually see some light flooding in here now, but I have to tell you, it is really, really chilly outside. Now, they had this in, like I said, a very humid, moist, hot environment. And if I had my heating pad, I keep on forgetting to bring it here. If I had my heating pad, I would totally have brought it and put this on a heating pad because I think that would actually help promote root growth. And I've also been trying to use warmer water because actually using a warmer, like a tepid water or water that's just above room temperature, that will help promote root growth as well. If you're using kind of cold or freezing cold water, that may actually shock the roots, so you don't want to actually do that. But I actually think that this plant may just be waiting to develop its roots in the warmer seasons. I mean, it literally hasn't grown too much. Like I said, the roots, you know, maybe they're a ½ inch bigger than what they had been, but otherwise there's nothing to cry home to mom about. But like I said, I think the biggest winner of them all, of these like experiments, is my Hoya obovata. I'm just so pleased with how this has rebounded from where it started. That's part of the joy of actually caring for plants. It's observing them and changing course when you see that something might not actually be going so well, or trying to stay on top of it and getting them potted up. And I have few plants here compared to what I have in Brooklyn, and I am kind of tackling the big idea of like, how am I going to get more and more of my plants up here? That might actually be for a future episode. I'm starting to have a plan, a master plan in my head on how I'm actually going to be able to carry all those items up, because, you know, even just this is so heavy and you don't want to like break limbs and break branches. I mean, I even just carried this over here and I broke one of these guys off, so c'est la vie. I also want to take the opportunity to thank all my viewers and subscribers. We are 5 years in the making of Plant One On Me here, and really couldn't be doing these long form botanical videos without you. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And also, we're giving 1% of our Google AdSense proceeds back to plant conservation. So this past year, we were able to do that with the Desert Garden Society. So that's with the succulent and cactus and succulent group. And I had heard about them through Liz from Bee Willow, because she had been giving money to help basically rematriate plants that had been taken out of their habitats through plant smuggling. So she inspired me, and so I said, you know, I'll be able to cut a check this year for them as well. So that was really amazing. I'll see this year whether I want to continue to do that, or whether there's some other plant conservation group or society out there that's doing great work. So if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments below, because I'm always interested in finding out about new ideas and opportunities. All right, guys, that's my spiel. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.